The subject of today's podcast is deeply sensitive: abuse in relationships. These issues find their way into all different kinds of relationships without regard to race, socioeconomic status, gender, age, or religion. My husband and I were no exception. No two situations are the same, but our commitment to partake in intensive lifelong therapy has allowed us to get back to a place that statistics show is extremely unlikely. For more information on the danger and details of abuse, please visit the resources we have provided in the description. If you or someone you know is currently navigating an abusive relationship, please know that support is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline offers confidential assistance, resources, and a compassionate ear. You can reach out to them at 1-800-799-SAFE. SAFE. Or visit their website at www.thehotline.org for information and safety planning tips. For those more comfortable with chat-based support, the National Domestic Violence Hotline provides a live chat option on their website by texting the word START to 88788. Remember, there is hope, there is help, and there is healing. You are deserving of a life free from fear and harm. Hello, everybody. I'm Sara Evans. I have been a professional country artist for the last 25, almost 30 years. But there's so much more to me and who I am than just my music and what you have heard from me on the radio. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, and I started singing when I was just 4 years old. I have 3 children. I am happily married. I have a son, Avery, who is 24, a daughter, Olivia, who's 20, and a daughter, Audrey, who is 19. And they are my world. Half of me, I used to always say, like, I'm Hannah Montana. Like, half of me is Sarah Barker, the homemaker, mom, wife, going to the baseball games, going to the football games. And then half of me is on a tour bus and making records and writing songs and, trying to have hit records. And so I've been dreaming of doing a podcast for a long time. I've been talking about it for about the past 4 years. And so we are finally here, and I'm sitting down and we are filming the very first episode ever of my podcast. When you're a celebrity, a lot of people know things about your life and they think they know you, but they don't really know you unless they're in your circle. And so what I want to do with this podcast and what I wanted to do with the memoir that I wrote is just to give people a little bit of insight as to what brought me to this point. The thing that scares me about today is, like I said, on one hand, I'm a really private person. On the other hand, I'm a celebrity. And I'm somewhere in the middle of being an introvert and an extrovert. So what scares me is saying something that I might regret, or saying something that might embarrass my children or annoy my family. I come from a very large farming family. I have 2 older brothers and 4 younger sisters, and family is everything to me. I think without family, the world falls apart, really. I want to start with the big question I think that is on everybody's mind. Not that everybody's sitting around thinking about Sara Evans, but I think if they had the opportunity to ask me one question, they would want to know about me and Jay. And Jay Barker is my husband. We've been married for 15 years. We got married in 2008. And I had just gone through a horrible divorce with my kid's dad. We had this amazing passion, but we also had things coming at us from all angles, because blending families is very difficult. When Jay was separated, and because it takes a long time to get divorced, it can take up to 2 years. And I think it took each of us about a year and a half to finalize our divorces. I think during that time, he emotionally started dealing with feelings that he didn't really know were there. Jay had an opinion about women that he didn't realize was there, or maybe that surfaced once he married me and we were settled, even though he was never, and it never has been, jealous of my career, anything like that. He loves my career, and he thinks I'm the best singer in the world. And he, is always like my biggest cheerleader in my music career. But I don't think that came without challenges for him. When we settled into our marriage, and he saw that I was like that, like very submissive, and I wasn't going to nag him, and I wasn't going to bitch at him and boss him around and tell him what to do. I think he was like, oh, I love this. Like, I love this. And a few years into our marriage, I think he began to sort of take that for granted and take advantage of it. And again, we probably, looking back on it now, we probably should have gotten into marriage counseling from day one. I think that any quarterback and any football player, especially if you've played NFL, which he did for 7 years, will tell you that there's a little bit of warlike PTSD that comes with it, because it's very violent. Because of the way that I was raised, so old-fashioned, and the man is the head of the home, I think I brought out in him a lot of feelings and emotions, and I've never loved anybody the way that I love him. I've also never been driven crazy the way that he drives me crazy. Something started happening to Jay. I would notice, and he never drank alcohol till he met me, which is so funny because, I like to drink, but I've never had a problem with alcohol. It didn't make him better. It made him worse. The safety that he felt being married to me, knowing that I'm a soft place for him to land, I think the safety of all that backfired maybe with him. And a psychologist, I'm sure, could explain it so much better. But he became addicted, I would say, to being the boss of me, wanting to control me, even if it's like, I'm just trying to keep you safe. And he's always told me that he's never been loved for who he really is until he met me, and that I accept him for who he is. Because prior to that, and even after coming out of Alabama, he had to be Mr. Perfect. It ended up being a very one-sided, volatile relationship with a lot of passion. I could tell that things were getting bad. And at that time, we were remodeling a home, living in the home that we were living in. Everything went wrong. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. I don't know if there have been, too many concussions or what, but even through all of that, I loved him so much. And I was determined that my children would not go through another divorce. And also, he raised them. I think I started realizing this is, I think this is, we're in abuse. I think we're using abuse in the marriage. And I didn't want to admit that. And I don't think he saw it as that. In July of 2020, we had a real bad fight, preceded by many bad fights. I protected him all the time from the kids, and he would never do or say anything unless we were alone. So I just thought, I will manage this and we can start therapy and it's going to get better. July 2020, we had like I said, a horrible fight that scared me. And so we separated at that point. It wasn't one of those situations where I separated and I was like, woohoo, and I'm going to go out, and I was devastated because I just wanted him to get better. We didn't have marriage problems. We had other problems that could have ended up, really, really, really bad. When I told the kids, I was very careful about what I told them. They were shocked. And then we went through a phase of getting back together, but not going to counseling, trying counseling. But Jay had to get over his fear of what people thought of him. Every time we tried counseling, he blamed everything on me. Everything. And if he were sitting here, and he probably will be on the podcast at some point, he would agree with you that nothing was my fault. I was little miss put on the apron and cook and, very, very, very old fashioned, which will probably annoy some people, but that's just the way I was raised. I mean, that's just me. He would sit here now, if he were here, and tell you that it wasn't, it was never anything that I did. It was just all him and what he was going through. And I think he was having a hard time accepting a lot of things from his past, from his childhood. I finally, called a lawyer and I filed for divorce. And every step that I took away from Jay, I was forcing myself to, because I didn't want to. I tried to be okay. I told my manager to, book every show that we got offered. I just wanted to be busy, but I couldn't tear my heart away from him. I knew that Jay was a great man who made some really bad decisions. In January of 21, I just couldn't stay away from him. So I started sneaking around and seeing him. He would come up to Nashville and I would lie to my children, which, killed me. But I knew in my heart that there was no real change. There would be no real change without extensive therapy and without a rock bottom, so to speak. In January of 2022, I think that was him hitting rock bottom. We had met for lunch. We got into a fight because what he was hoping for is that I would just forgive him, as I always had. And without us having to do the hard work and go to therapy, that, I promise things will change. Let's just stay together. Let's get back together. He got mad because he wasn't getting his way. And we had met at a restaurant and he wanted me to be the usual Sara and just do whatever he wanted, do whatever he asked for, do whatever he said, do it his way. And I said no. And I said, and also the kids won't accept that. And he got really upset in the restaurant, really upset, and raised his voice. And I saw waitresses looking over, at us. And I just got up and left. And it was freezing. And I was walking in my car and it was sort of like just praying that he wasn't following me. That night he texted me and I knew that he was not in a good headspace. I said, "Did you make it back? Okay." And he said, make it back. I didn't go back to Birmingham. I stayed here for you and hoping that, you'd see me again or see me tomorrow or whatever. And I think I just said, you need to go back to Birmingham. So that night we went across the street to my friend's house. We had a big bonfire, and it was one of my children, my friend, and her daughter. And we were just having a bonfire, and he had been texting me all night. Can't believe you're doing this to us. Can't believe, because when you're in that frame of mind, nothing's your fault. I mean, everything was my fault. I'm divorcing him. I'm leaving him. I'm breaking up the family. So we were leaving the bonfire, and he had come over in his truck and was sitting on the side of the street. And it really scared me. And it scared all of us. Especially my child that was with me. And so the friend of ours was driving me. We were getting ready to pull into the driveway. And granted, I've never spoken about this publicly. This is the first time I've ever spoken about it publicly. He had a verbal altercation with my child, who had never seen that side of him ever. And it scared the shit out of her. And then he jumped in his truck and he started backing up at a very high speed. I knew Jay, so I didn't feel the same way that my child felt. My child thought that he was going to plow our car down, that he was backing up towards our car. And that she was about to watch something horrific. Or at the very least, an accident. Which would have been his truck hitting my side of the car where I was in the front seat. She was terrified and called 911. He sped away and cops came. We were all standing in the foyer of our home and the cops were questioning, and my child was more upset than I was because I've been privately having these experiences with Jay for 13 years or 14 years. It was a first for her to see her dad like that. Because he was so good to the kids. He loves my children. So the low point I was talking about for him was that he couldn't believe that he raised his voice to her, that he frightened her. That was his low point. And I will never get over that. So we were explaining to the police what happened. He sped away. In my love for him, as I always have loved him and cared for him and taken care of him, not financially, but emotionally, taking care of him. I tried to text him and call him, before the police got there to say the police have been called, you know, I was basically warning him, like, stay away, or you're going to get into some big trouble. And I just felt so ashamed and so stupid. And my child was so mad, not at me, at Jay. But to know that she was standing there thinking, you know, he's about to hit my mom with the truck. I don't know how close he got, honestly. And I don't know what it looked like to her. But I heard her scream. Like I heard her scream so loud. He either blocked me or his phone died. So he didn't get my messages that the cops had been called. During that time, he was very, very worried that I was moving on with my life, that I had found someone else, or that I would, quote unquote, cheat on him. And so he was just over at the house seeing what I was doing. I think because I was giving him the silent treatment the whole evening while he was texting me, he was going crazy. Where is she? What is she doing? So because my child confronted him, it embarrassed him. And the police said, we need to ask you a series of questions. And I had to, say yes to a lot of those questions. They said, well, we have to put out a warrant for his arrest. And I was like, no. He's gone. He's not coming back. We're going to go to bed. We're good. And they said, well, it's not up to you. It's state law. So I was just like, oh my God. There's a warrant out. We went to bed and he came back. They snatched him right up. They were waiting. I mean, they were just there. I woke up the next morning at around 10:30 and I had probably 8 missed calls from Jay and from my brother. And he had called my brother. He called him, and he was everything. He was handcuffed, everything, the whole deal, and spent the night in jail. And because he's my husband and I love him and all that, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't picture it. I mean, it was so traumatizing for me as well as him, because I have I'm an empath. And so all I could think about was he going through. I really honestly did not think that he was trying to hit our car. I think he was trying to back up as fast as he could to see who I was in the car with, to see if I was with another man. And my child thought, he's gonna run into them. I called a friend of ours and said, you need to come up, who's a retired police officer. You need to come up and bail him out of jail and get him settled and get him home. And then I thought, well, that's it. That's the end of our marriage. That's the end of my relationship with the love of my life. And 2 out of my 3 kids were out of town. And So when they got home, they were freaking out. I mean, they both came home immediately. But for like a week, I would say none of us left the cloud couch. Like we just stayed on the cloud couch and I couldn't function. We immediately turned off all commenting on my Instagram. I never posted. I never did anything. I didn't do anything. Some scumbag in Nashville picked it up and put it out there. And then, so in a day or two, it was everywhere. And I was just getting call after call after call after call. And I'm like, I cannot believe this is happening to me and to my children again. I've lost the love of my life because, and when Jay comes on the podcast, you'll see, I mean, to me, he's just gorgeous. He's funny. We have so much in common. We feel the same about everything, like raising kids, family structures, politics, religion. I mean, everything. We just love each other. I mean, we're best friends. And so I was on the bus one night, went back on the road, and I got a text from Jay. And I was sitting in the front of the bus, like in the captain's seat. And I got a text from Jay and I just could not believe it because I thought he would never speak to me again because, in his mind, I had him thrown in jail. And he was mad about that or whatever. I mean, in my mind, I did not have him thrown in jail. In my mind, he got himself thrown in jail. But I knew that he would see it that way because he had not had any therapy yet or work done. You know what I mean? Like, so he would see it that way, of course, blame everything on me. I don't know. I guess it must have been about 3 months. All of a sudden I got this text from him and it said, everybody says that I shouldn't contact you. Oh, well, no, because of what happened, there was a court order that he couldn't contact me or my child that was involved or anybody that was involved in that night. And he also had to start doing these Zoom meetings, sort of like, therapy sessions, or it would be like the equivalent maybe to like an AA meeting or something. And I think that was actually really helping him. I think at first he dreaded that so much, but in the end it ended up that he made some friends and it helped him to really see. I mean, like he told me, he said, I thought I would be doing these meetings and like everybody would be these low life, whatever. And he told me, a long time later, he said, I was one of the worst ones in there. So he texted and he said, everybody says that I shouldn't contact you. But you are still my wife. And the standards that I set would not be the same standards as a lot of women, maybe, So a lot of women will judge me and will want to judge me. When he said, but you are still my wife, I don't know. melted because I thought, I am still your wife and we can talk if we want to. We're both adults, and so I texted him back and I think I just said something short and sweet like, how are you? And, I'm on the road or whatever. And so we sort of tiptoed back to each other. We were both very skittish. We started talking more and texting more, and he said, I will literally do anything not to lose you. I will literally do whatever you tell me to do. I will go away. I'll do quote rehab, whatever. And I said, well, I'm going to have to think about it and see if I trust you. So he got a place up in Nashville. And he did another thing during that time that was a huge, huge gift to me. He helped me with something financially that, to me, because I had never been taken care of by a man in my whole life other than Jay. And so even with the divorce papers that I presented to him, he just said yes to everything. Like there was no disputing any of it because he knew that none of it was my fault and that he had forced my hand. And we started sneaking around, and I would go over and see him at his place here, and we would just like order dinner and talk. But and he started therapy. So my conditions were, you have to be in therapy for the rest of your life, and we have to be in marriage counseling for the rest of our lives. And when we go to marriage counseling, you have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Also, I wanted to hold the marriage vows, even though a lot of people will say, and I don't encourage all women to do this. Every situation is different. Some situations are a lot more dangerous than mine. Some situations are less, but they still should probably divorce. But I just did not want to divorce again and start over. And I just pictured myself being alone and missing him and thinking we could have tried harder. But it took me filing for divorce, I think, for him to realize, oh shit, she's serious. Like, this is it. So we would just spend like an hour together, and then maybe in a week, another hour. And then we found an amazing marriage therapist who specializes in our situation. And he's helped us tremendously. And I think we did that for about a year before I told anybody. Because I was wanting to see how therapy would go. And if he would allow me to say everything I wanted to say without getting mad. I just didn't not want to be married to him. I wanted, because I knew it was so simple. Some people have marriage problems that are like, they fight all the time. we didn't fight all the time. He fought me when he was in his low spots. He fought against me. He pushed me away, pushed my love away. So every situation is different. I would never encourage anybody to stay in a dangerous situation. Then I had to think about my child who had the altercation with him, because she was not going to forgive. She was not going to ever accept us getting back together. And I couldn't fathom the future, like grandbabies and stuff, and Daddy J's not there. And everybody calls him Daddy J, like everybody in the family. And I couldn't fathom starting over with somebody. I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it because he is my best friend. And I remember Patsy Cline said on the movie Sweet Dreams, who knows if she actually said it, but they wrote it into the movie. She said something like, Charlie may be something, but he never was boring. I think there's a part of me that needs that, or needed that stimulation. And I had very little to go on in terms of what to expect from a man. My father ignored me, even though I was famous. Not that that matters, but it's like you would think that, like I made it to the top of my industry. And Jay, even though Jay was mean to me at times, I knew that he really did love me. I'm also in therapy because I need to always remember that that's not okay. That I need to be able to say whatever I want, be whoever I want, do whatever I want, do whatever I want. Like if I want to pick up and go to Mexico with my friend, I'm going to do that. And he is not going to tell me I can't. And he knows that now. It's much more balanced now, where it was completely out of balance before. He was, he was in charge and the boss, and that was it. And now we have much more of a mutual respect, and I can happily say that my child who had the altercation with him had a few long, really difficult discussions with him. And she said, you had such small shoes to fill. And he failed. And that killed him. I mean, that just killed him. But we're all Christians, and I've taught my children to forgive. And no, I don't know if I could forgive somebody who actually ever, would truly hurt one of my kids or anything like that, even though the Bible still says forgive. But my 3 children have forgiven him. And we're all back together on the cloud couch again. Every day we thank God that we didn't split. And that doesn't mean we're all better. everything is just perfect, but we're together. And I can honestly tell you that people can change because he's a totally different person. I mean, he's just jumping, just like helping me like a normal spouse should be. And I'm happier than I've ever been. We've tried to strike a balance on him not having the desire to control anyone or anything. Just let people be who they are. A lot of times when there is abuse in marriages, it's because every man needs to develop their masculine side and their feminine side. And every woman needs to develop her masculine side and her feminine side. And that's why there's a father and mother. And we help, hopefully in a healthy way, develop those. I think he saw me and he saw this shell, like I'm a shell, and he's putting in all the things that he wants in the shell. I think there were times where I was just a body. And when I became my own person and I had my own opinions, or I would disagree with him, he did not understand that. He couldn't comprehend that because he wanted me to fulfill the feminine side that didn't develop fully in him. So, what do you mean you don't like Brussels sprouts? Yes, you do. Because I like Brussels sprouts. And I used to always say, we're two different people. Like, we can't always be the same. And I can't always agree with you.
Do you feel like, and I'm going to talk about this as like, we're talking about, I've met Jay, I love Jay. We're talking about what was happening when Jay was at his worst.
Yes.
So.
I understand.
Don't think about it now.
I understand.
But like.
Listen, people have the right to be angry with him.
Yeah, and you can still, I mean, anyone would be. Your kids are allowed to be. You're allowed to be, not at that period.
I still go through phases where I'll have a PTSD sort of flashback where I'm mad at him or something will trigger. We just went to Charleston recently and he said something that triggered the shit out of me. But the difference today is I got so mad at him and I told him that I was so mad at him and he apologized. So we're much more like a normal back and forth married couple.
You were looking out for him and he was looking out for him.
Always.
And who was looking out for you?
God was always looking out for me. And my kids. I can't say enough about, everybody loves their kids, but mine are truly special. I mean, you'll see that as they come on the show but they didn't know anything. Nobody knew anything. I had a couple of friends in Mountain Brook that were looking out for me and that I, would call when it was a bad day. Then there would be times where Jay really, really would look out for me and he would do something so amazing.
I think you need to like honor yourself a little bit for what you did alone.
I think the alone part for me was always in an effort. Everything I've done in my life since Avery was born has been to protect my children and give them the best life possible. That's why I didn't want them to know anything negative about their stepfather who raised them. I would say that true taking care of me for no other reason than just you love me, checking in on me. I'm talking about people who, like, nobody who, makes money off of me or anything like that. Just normal people. Nobody in the industry. Probably a couple of friends in Mountain Brook and a friend that I have here. And if Jay were here now, he would cry thinking about that, probably. But I never wanted my children to take care of me. That's why I never told them anything, because I wanted them to have this amazing life. And they did. They had an amazing childhood. Nobody knew. But as far as like people who aren't paid to take care of me, no one but Jay. Half Jay, half not Jay. Sometimes there are women in situations where there's domestic violence on different levels. It might be verbal, it might be physical, it might be financial, it might be psychological. It's absolutely never ever right. And it's never something to be taken lightly. And I think that a lot of times there is great danger for women. A lot of danger without a lot of options, financial options, things like that. But it's not a situation where, it only happens to this sect of the population or this sect of the population. People are troubled, and mental health, especially in this country, is so sorely overlooked. And, the fact that if you've got a child, I have somebody very close to me who has a child that has severe depression, and they cannot get insurance to pay for therapy for her. So I would never, ever sit here and say, oh, if you just tough it out, or if you just, stay in it and work it out. No, I filed for divorce. I did. I truly now believe that we are going to stay together forever and be very happy, but that's not going to be without rules that I've put into place, like we will be in therapy for the rest of our lives. He will be in therapy for the rest of his life. I will be in therapy for the rest of my life. Because there are reasons why I chose to stay. There are a lot of women who would just say, screw this, I'm out. One thing that I think kept it at bay a little bit for us was that no one knew about it. It wasn't anything that ever happened in front of anybody. In our situation, I do believe that, this is a miracle from God, and we're so happy now, but I don't want anyone to think that I'm advocating staying in a relationship where you are ever in your gut, you know, that you need to exit the situation. Every woman needs to follow her gut on that and do what is best for her. I believe and I hope that I've done that. And again, I didn't just sit and do nothing. I mean, I filed for divorce. We're living it day by day. We have the best talks now. I mean, you know, I sat him down and I said, I need to talk to you. I'm going to go on the podcast, and this is going to be the first episode. And also wanted to mention too, during that time after the police came that night, the other thing that I did is I started writing a new album. The time that we were separated, I started writing songs, and I wrote so many songs about this topic. And there's a song called Pride, and it's the first song that I wrote for my new album, which is coming out this year. And it's called Pride. Was I terrified to play that song for Jay? Yes. Not terrified that he would do anything, but I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to embarrass him. I didn't want to, you know, I never want to embarrass his children or, you know, anything like that. But I wrote so many songs about our situation. And it's funny because the album goes from my lowest point to where I was just, you know, the kids had to say to me, like, you are not okay. Like we would go on vacations and or even go out on the boat on the lake, and I would just be like crying because, you know, DJ's not here to drive the boat. Now I have to drive the boat. And so the album is super interesting because it goes from my lowest point to somewhere in the middle, like, you know, I fucking hate you, to, well, now you've sent me this text and now we're seeing each other again. And I swear it's so much like that George and Tammy show where they just couldn't stay away from each other, or that's how they depicted it in the show. And then the album ends with where we are now, exactly, that we are sort of back in baby's arms, to quote Patsy Cline songs. So the first song that I wrote for the album is a song called Pride, and I'd never written with these people before. It was Sean McConnell and Maddie Diaz. And I'm such an open book. And so when I meet you, I tell you everything about me, you know, like not the real juicy stuff, but I'm just like, so I went in and I was super depressed, and I told them about the night of the police coming and everything that happened. And they were like, oh man, you know, and I said, so I kind of want to write a song about that and about, you know, living in a relationship like that. So we wrote this unbelievable song that it's probably one of the best songs I've ever co-written, and we were all crying. In fact, every writing appointment that I went to write for this album, I cried. And I ended up having the co-writers crying too. We wrote Pride and I played it for a few people. And I didn't even sing on the work tape. You know, you write it and then you record it just on a little work tape because I was crying too much. And so Maddie Diaz sang the work tape. Then I went back into Sean's studio and I got the nerve up to sing the demo myself. I had to stop several times because it's so heavy. Then when Jay and I got back together, I And I told him this in therapy. I said, I'm angry because once again, everything's on me. I'm the one that has to, tell my friends that we're back together. You have nothing to lose, or all my friends are going to be mad at me. Or, I'm the one that has to tell the kids. I'm the one that has to convince the kids that, that he loves them and that it's going to be okay. And I'm smart, and I really am smart, and I'm making a wise decision. And now I'm having to change the song Pride that talks about really, really heavy, dark stuff. And I said, but if you want me to, I'll change it to third person, to where instead of you and me, it's he and she, and he did this to her. And Jay said, absolutely not. You are going to say what you want. You're going to sing what you want, because this is your story to tell. And our relationship has been so unfairly weighted in my side, meaning his. And so you sing that song and you record that song exactly as you wrote it. I mean, he can't listen to it. And I asked him to leave the studio when it was time for us to record it. Because again, I don't want to hurt him, and I don't want to hurt his kids or my kids. I don't want anyone to be embarrassed or be like, you're just vomiting all this private information. So I may not listen to your podcast because I can't, but you have to sing this song. I played it for him, and he said, you have to record this exactly as it was written, and it could help a lot of other people. And he said, but it did happen to you. This is your story to tell. And that's what I'm going to do.